Silent vigil. The Galactic hegemony's central command fortress hovered above the crystalline world of Nexus Prime, its imposing structure a testament to 3 millennia of unchallenged rule. Inside the Grand Strategy Chamber, Supreme Admiral Zarthan, Vex studied the holographic projection of the Milky Way with narrowed eyes, his scaled fingers tracing the spiral arm where a troubling anomaly had appeared. "Show me the signal origin again," he commanded, voice echoing against the obsidian walls. The galaxy map zoomed toward a seemingly insignificant yellow star, Sol, a system that had been quarantined for nearly 2 centuries following the isolation. Protocol enacted after the brief but catastrophic Terra Hegemony War, a system that should have been silent. "The signal persists, Supreme Admiral," reported Analyst Kirax, her luminescent skin pulsing with anxiety. "It began 47 standard cycles ago and has grown stronger. Our deep space relays confirm it's emanating from Earth itself." Vex's facial ridges tightened, the equivalent of a human frown. "Impossible. The isolation barrier was designed to be impenetrable. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out." "Yet something has," said Counselor Thelax, the eldest member of the Hegemony High Command. His ancient voice carried the weight of wisdom accumulated across 12 lifetimes. "The humans were always resourceful." The chamber fell silent at the diplomatic understatement. The Terra Hegemony War had lasted just 11 standard months, but had cost the hegemony more ships, resources, and lives than the previous 5 centuries of expansion combined. The decision to isolate Earth rather than risk complete destruction had been pragmatic, if humiliating. "What does the signal contain?" Vex demanded. Kirax hesitated. "It appears to be a simple navigational beacon, sir, but its construction is unlike anything in our database. It's elegant, efficient. It accomplishes with a few energy pulses what our systems require complex arrays to achieve." "They've been advancing," growled Vex. 2 centuries of isolation, and instead of regressing, they've been building, creating, evolving. Counselor Thelax's ancient eyes closed momentarily. "We always suspected they might. It's why the isolation was temporary. A chance for both sides to recover, for cooler minds to prevail. And now they're reaching out," said Vex. "Breaking protocol." "Perhaps," Thelax replied cautiously. "It is time to answer." Captain Eliana Chen stood on the observation deck of the Earth Defense Force flagship Resilience, watching distant stars through the transparent aluminium viewport. Behind her, the command crew worked in practiced harmony, their motions economical, their voices low. "Status report on the beacon?" she asked without turning. Commander Jackson consulted his neural interface, the subtle glow beneath his temple, the only visible sign of the technology. "Transmitting as planned, Captain. Power signature stable. If they're listening, they can hear us." Chen nodded, her expression unreadable. At 43, she represented the new generation of Earth's defenders, born after the war, raised on stories of both human heroism and the devastating cost of the conflict. Her short-cropped hair and the faint scar running along her jaw spoke of pragmatism, not vanity. "And the fleet?" "All vessels maintain position in the shadow of Luna. Stealth systems operating at optimal efficiency. Long-range sensors detect no hegemony activity within the isolation boundary." Chen finally turned, surveying the bridge with steady eyes. "They'll come. The question is whether they'll come to talk or to finish what they started." Earth had changed profoundly in the 187 years since the hegemony had erected the isolation barrier, a sophisticated energy field that prevented all conventional travel and communication between Sol and the rest of the galaxy. Cut off but not defeated, humanity had turned inward, focusing on solving the fundamental problems that had always held them back: energy production, resource scarcity, political division, environmental degradation. Necessity had proven a powerful unifier. Without the stars to explore, humanity had been forced to perfect life within their solar system. Mars, Venus, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, all had been transformed, terraformed, settled. The asteroid belt had become an industrial powerhouse. Pluto housed the most advanced research facilities ever constructed, and all along they had prepared for this day. The day the isolation would end, one way or another. "Captain," called Lieutenant Reyes from the communications station, her voice taut with sudden urgency. "We're detecting a response. Multiple vessels approaching the isolation boundary." Chen straightened, hands clasped behind her back. "Identification? Hegemony signatures, Captain. A diplomatic cruiser flanked by 4 battle cruisers. 5 ships," Commander Jackson observed. "Not an invasion force." "No," agreed Chen. "A message." The observation deck's display activated, showing the approaching hegemony vessels. They were elegant in their alien design, all curves and gleaming surfaces that seemed to flow rather than connect. Beautiful and deadly. "They're hailing us, Captain," Reyes reported. "Standard diplomatic frequency." Chen nodded once. "Put it through." The display shimmered, revealing the imposing figure of a hegemony official. His scaled skin gleamed with ceremonial oils, and the elaborate crest of his station crowned his elongated head. Eyes with vertical pupils regarded the humans with careful neutrality. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Hegemony," he stated, voice modulated to accommodate human hearing. "I speak with the authority of the High Council and Supreme Admiral Vex." Chen stepped forward. "Captain Eliana Chen of the Earth Defense Force. I am authorized to speak for the United Earth Government." The ambassador's expression remained unreadable. "You have violated the terms of the isolation protocol by transmitting beyond the boundary. Explain." "The protocol was imposed, not agreed to," Chen replied evenly. "Earth has endured isolation for nearly 2 centuries. We determined it was time for that to end." The ambassador's eyes narrowed fractionally. "The isolation protocol was established as a merciful alternative to your extinction. The terms were clear: 1,000 years of quarantine, after which reintegration would be considered if humanity had demonstrated sufficient evolution in its tendencies." Chen smiled thinly. "We've evolved, Ambassador, more than you can imagine." "Your signal suggests technological advancement, yes," the ambassador conceded. "But the hegemony requires more than clever engineering to consider humanity ready to rejoin galactic society." "We're not asking permission," Chen said, her voice quiet but firm. "The isolation ends now. We are prepared to negotiate terms for peaceful interaction, but Earth and the Sol system are sovereign territory. We will not accept any arrangement that compromises that sovereignty." The ambassador's composure slipped momentarily, revealing surprise, perhaps even shock. He recovered quickly. "Captain Chen, perhaps you misunderstand your position. The hegemony does not negotiate with quarantined species. You have 2 options: accept continued isolation until the 1,000-year term is complete, or surrender your system to hegemony oversight, which would allow for a graduated introduction to galactic society under our guidance." Chen's expression hardened. "There is a 3rd option, Ambassador. You recognize Earth's independence and right to self-determination, and we establish diplomatic relations as equals." The ambassador's crest flared, a sign of agitation or possibly amusement. "Equality must be earned, Captain. The hegemony has ruled the stars for millennia. Earth is but one world among millions. Your defiance nearly 2 centuries ago was unexpected, even impressive, but ultimately futile. Whatever advances you've made in isolation cannot possibly match the combined might of 1,000 worlds." "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged. "But we're prepared to find out." The ambassador studied her for a long moment. "I will convey your position to the High Council. In the meantime, be advised that any attempt to breach the isolation boundary will be considered an act of war." "The boundary no longer exists, Ambassador," Chen replied. "What?" The ambassador's composure shattered completely. Chen gestured to Commander Jackson, who tapped a sequence into his neural interface. Across the solar system, hidden emitters activated simultaneously. A wave of precisely calibrated energy surged outward, intersecting with the isolation field's frequency. Where they met, reality seemed to ripple. And then the boundary that had contained Sul for nearly 2 centuries simply unraveled, dissolving into harmless particles. The isolation field was impressive technology, Chen said to the stunned ambassador. It took us decades to understand it fully. Another few decades to determine how to neutralize it. We could have disabled it years ago, but we weren't ready. Now we are. On the display, the ambassador's mouth worked silently for several seconds before he found his voice. This is unprecedented. An act of rebellion that cannot... Not rebellion, Ambassador. Independence. Earth isn't seeking to overthrow the hegemony or challenge its authority over its member worlds. We simply refuse to be counted among them. The ambassador's eyes narrowed to slits. The High Council will not accept this defiance. You have 24 of your hours to reconsider. Surrender your system to hegemony oversight or face the consequences. The transmission cut abruptly. Commander Jackson moved to Chen's side as the display returned to showing the hegemony vessels, now retreating toward the edge of the system. 24 hours isn't much time, Captain. Chen's gaze remained fixed on the departing ships. It's all the time we need, Commander. We've had nearly 2 centuries to prepare for this day. She turned to address the bridge crew, her voice clear and resolute. Alert all Earth Defense Force vessels. Activate the Sol system defense grid, and send word to our outpost beyond Neptune. Operation Phoenix is now active. As the crew sprang into action, Chen returned her attention to the stars beyond the viewport. For generations, humanity had waited, hidden in the shadows of their own star. They had rebuilt, reimagined, and reinvented themselves. Not just their technology, but their society, their values, their purpose. The hegemony expected surrender. They would receive something else entirely. They demanded Earth's surrender, Chen murmured. We'll send warships instead. The first strike Supreme Admiral Zarthan Vex stalked the command deck of the hegemony dreadnought Inevitable Dominion, his clawed feet clicking against the polished surface with each agitated step. The massive view screen displayed the Sol system, the yellow star at its center now surrounded by a pulsing red outline, the universal hegemony symbol for a threat requiring immediate neutralization. Ambassador Krell's report is confirmed, announced Fleet Intelligence Officer Mira as she reviewed incoming data streams. The humans have indeed dismantled the isolation barrier. Our preliminary analysis suggests they used a harmonic resonance disruptor of extraordinary precision. Impossible, growled Sub-Admiral Thrak, his heavy-set frame tensing beneath his ceremonial armor. The barrier incorporated 67 different phase shift algorithms specifically designed to prevent such tampering. Nevertheless, Mira replied, coolly, they succeeded. Moreover, long-range scans indicate significant industrial development throughout their system. The 4th planet has been terraformed. The gas giants are surrounded by hundreds of artificial structures. The asteroid belt shows evidence of extensive mining operations. Vex halted his pacing, mandibles clicking in thought. They've been busy, but industry alone does not make them a match for the hegemony. What of their military capacity? Mira hesitated. Inconclusive, Supreme Admiral. We detect numerous vessels throughout the system, but they employ some form of energy signature masking. We cannot accurately assess their capabilities. It doesn't matter. Thrak dismissed with a wave of his armored hand. Whatever toys they've built in their isolation, they cannot hope to stand against even a fraction of our fleet. He gestured to the tactical display showing the 47 warships now assembled at his command. One swift, decisive strike will remind them of their place. Vex considered his subordinate's words. Thrak represented the majority view among the hegemony military elite, that humans were dangerous primitives who had gotten lucky in their brief rebellion. A nuisance that had been contained rather than exterminated solely due to the Councilor's sentimental concerns about species preservation. The High Council has authorized a demonstration of force, Vex acknowledged, but they prefer capitulation to annihilation. The humans must surrender their sovereignty, not their existence. Of course, Supreme Admiral, Thrak agreed, though his tone suggested he considered the distinction irrelevant. We will offer them one final opportunity to accept hegemony protection before we proceed. Vex nodded slowly. Very well. Prepare the fleet for transition to the Sol system. Standard invasion formation. As officers rushed to comply with his orders, Vex turned to the ancient counselor Thelax, who had observed the proceedings in silence. From his elevated seat at the rear of the command deck. "You disapprove, counselor?" Vex inquired, noting the elder's troubled expression. Thelax's age-clouded eyes focused on the Supreme Admiral. "I remember the First War, Admiral. I remember how it began with our certainty and their desperation. I remember how quickly that certainty crumbled. The circumstances are different now," Vex asserted. "We are prepared. We understand their capabilities." "Do we?" Thelax asked simply. 2 centuries is a long time even for developmental latecomers, like humans. And desperation has always been their most powerful weapon. Aboard the Resilience, Captain Eliana Chen reviewed the tactical display with her senior officers. The holographic projection showed the approaching hegemony fleet, 47 vessels in the standard hegemony arrowhead formation, led by a massive dreadnought. "Right on schedule," observed Commander Jackson. 24 hours to the minute. Lieutenant. Commander Sato, the tactical officer, studied the enemy formation with professional interest. "Classic intimidation approach. They want us to see them coming, to understand the overwhelming force we're facing." Chen nodded. "And what do you see?" "Commander Sato?" The tactical officer smiled thinly. "Arrogance, Captain. Their formation optimizes for visual impact, not combat effectiveness. They're exposing their flanks unnecessarily. Their sensor grid has significant blind spots at their current approach vector. They expect surrender, not resistance," Chen concluded. "Let's disappoint them." She activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands battle stations. Prepare for engagement." Throughout the Resilience, crew members moved with practiced efficiency, securing stations and activating systems that had been tested thousands of times but never used in actual combat. There was tension in the air, but no panic. Only the focused determination of people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "Fleet status?" Chen inquired. "All vessels report ready, Captain," replied Commander Jackson. "Defense grid is online. The Ganymede and Titan contingents are in position. The civilian evacuation protocols have been completed." Chen nodded, satisfied. "Very good. And our special projects?" "Phoenix protocol assets are standing by," Jackson confirmed quietly. "If necessary, they can be activated with a single command." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Chen murmured. The communication officers, Console chimed. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the hegemony fleet." "On screen," Chen ordered, straightening her uniform jacket. The main display activated, revealing the imposing figure of Supreme Admiral Zarthan Vex. Unlike the ambassador's diplomatic posturing, the Supreme Admiral made no attempt to conceal his disdain. "I am Supreme Admiral Vex of the Galactic Hegemony," he announced without preamble. "You have been found in violation of the isolation protocol. Your system is hereby placed under direct hegemony control. Power down your defenses and prepare to receive occupation forces." Chen regarded the alien commander calmly. "This is Captain Eliana Chen of the Earth Defense Force. The Sol system does not recognize hegemony authority. We will defend our sovereignty by any means necessary." Vex's scaled features tightened in what might have been amusement. "Look at my fleet, Captain. You have... what? A handful of ships? Accept reality. Surrender now, and your people will be treated fairly under hegemony administration." "You misunderstand, Admiral," Chen replied. "We're not refusing because we believe we can defeat you. We're refusing because we know we can." The Admiral's expression hardened. "Your defiance is noted, Captain. It will be remembered when we establish the terms of your surrender. You have 10 minutes to reconsider before we commence hostilities." The transmission ended abruptly. Commander Jackson moved to Chen's side. "He didn't even ask about our capabilities." "He doesn't care," Chen replied. "To him, we're primitives with delusions of grandeur." She turned to address the bridge crew. "They'll begin with a coordinated EMP strike to disable our electronic systems, followed by precision kinetic bombardment of what they perceive as key military installations. Standard hegemony invasion protocol." Just as we expected, Sato confirmed. Chen nodded grimly. Just as we planned for. Commander Jackson, initiate misdirection protocol. Commander Sato, prepare defense grid for selective activation. Let's show them what 2 centuries of isolation has taught us. As the officers carried out her orders, Chen activated a secure channel to Earth's Unified Defense Command. Defense Command, this is Chen. The Hegemony fleet has arrived and issued their ultimatum. We are proceeding as planned. Understood, Captain, came the steady reply from General Rivera, the head of Earth's military forces. All planetary defense systems are at your command. Good hunting. The communication ended as Commander Jackson reported. Misdirection protocol active, Captain. Phantom fleet signatures generating. Across the Sol system, hundreds of energy signatures suddenly appeared. False echoes created by specialized emitters hidden on moons, asteroids, and orbital platforms. To hegemony sensors, it would appear as though Earth had concealed a massive fleet that was now deploying from hidden bases throughout the system. They're responding, Sato announced, monitoring the enemy fleet. Their formation is breaking up. They're attempting to reorient to address the new threats. Chen watched the tactical display with steady eyes. Status of their advance? Holding position at the edge of weapons range, they appear to be conducting additional scans. As expected, Chen noted. They're cautious now, reassessing. But not cautious enough. Prepare Phantom Fleet for simulated attack runs. The false signatures began to move, converging on the hegemony, fleet from multiple vectors. It was an elaborate deception. Energy patterns designed to mimic ships on attack trajectories complete with weapons charging signatures. Hegemony fleet is breaking formation, Sato reported. They're dispersing to counter our Phantom fleet. Chen's expression remained neutral, though a glint of satisfaction showed in her eyes. And now, they've compromised their defensive integrity. Lieutenant Reyes, send the activation code to the defense grid. Target their command ship first, then priority targets as designated. Throughout the Sol system, concealed defense platforms suddenly activated. Unlike the Phantom fleet, these were very real. Autonomous weapons platforms incorporating Earth's most advanced technology, hidden in asteroid fields, buried on airless moons, and drifting in seemingly random orbits. Defense grid online, Reyes. Confirmed. All platforms report target acquisition. Chen took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. Fire. Across the vast emptiness of space, hundreds of defense platforms unleashed coordinated salvos of energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. The attack came from everywhere and nowhere, invisible until the moment of impact. The Hegemony fleet, dispersed and disoriented by the Phantom fleet deception, was caught completely unprepared. Their command ship, the massive dreadnought Inevitable, Dominion, took multiple direct hits to its propulsion systems and weapons arrays before its shields could fully engage. Direct hits confirmed on 39 targets, Sato reported, unable to keep a note of triumph from his voice. Hegemony command. Ship has lost propulsion and primary weapons. 14 enemy vessels show critical damage. 3. He paused, consulting his display. No, 5 confirmed destroyed. On the main view screen, the once mighty Hegemony fleet was in disarray. Ships tumbled out of formation, shields flaring against continued bombardment from the defense grid. Emergency. Beacons flashed from damaged vessels. They're attempting to regroup, Jackson observed, establishing a defensive perimeter around their command ship. Chen nodded. As they should. Now for Phase 2. Deploy the fleet. Throughout the Sol system, the real Earth Defense Force emerged from hiding. Unlike the Phantom signatures, these ships were smaller, sleeker, and far more advanced than anything the Hegemony had encountered before. They moved with precision and coordination that spoke of extensive training and complete technological integration. All ships report ready, Captain, Jackson confirmed, awaiting your command. Chen studied the tactical display one final time, taking in the positions of both fleets. The Hegemony still had numerical superiority, but their formation was shattered, their confidence broken. It was time to press the advantage. Order the fleet to engage, she commanded. Disable rather than destroy where possible. We want prisoners, not martyrs. As Earth's ships accelerated toward the enemy, Chen opened a channel to the hegemony command ship. The image that appeared on the screen showed a command deck in chaos, emergency lighting, officers shouting orders, damage control teams rushing. About. Supreme Admiral Vex stood in the center, his pristine uniform now torn and stained, but his bearing still proud. Admiral Vex, Chen greeted him calmly. As you can see, your assessment of our capabilities was flawed. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. An impressive first strike, Captain, but the hegemony controls 1,000 worlds. This temporary advantage means nothing in the face of our full might. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged. But today isn't about winning a war, Admiral. It's about sending a message. Earth will not surrender. Earth will not be controlled. And any force that threatens our sovereignty will be met with the full measure of our resolve. Vex's mandibles clicked in barely suppressed rage. You cannot hope to— I'm not finished, Chen interrupted, her voice hardening. In moments, my fleet will engage your remaining vessels. They have orders to disable rather than destroy. Once your ships are secured, we will evacuate your crews, provide medical assistance to your wounded, and then you will be escorted to the edge of the Sol system. You presume to dictate terms? Vex snarled. I offer mercy, Chen corrected. Return to the hegemony. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth wishes no conflict, but will not tolerate any threat to its freedom. And tell them that next time we won't be so gentle. The bridge of the Resilience fell silent as everyone awaited the Admiral's response. For a long moment, Vex simply stared at Chen, his alien features unreadable. Then, slowly, a change came. Over him, not surrender, not fear, but something like dawning comprehension. You've been planning this for a long time, he said, his voice quieter now. Since the day you isolated us, Chen confirmed. Every generation building on the work of the last. Every child raised with the knowledge that one day we would need to defend ourselves again. Vex seemed to consider this. And if I refuse your terms? If we fight to the last ship? Chen's expression remained impassive. Then you will die for nothing, Admiral. The message will still be delivered, only written in the empty space where your fleet once existed. The tactical display showed Earth's fleet closing in, surrounding the remaining hegemony vessels. It was no longer a battle. It was a foregone conclusion. Supreme Admiral, urged a voice off-screen, we cannot sustain another engagement. Our shields are failing. Weapons systems are compromised. Vex closed his eyes briefly, his proud posture sagging almost imperceptibly. When he looked up again, his gaze was different, less arrogant, more calculating. Very well, Captain Chen. We will accept your terms. But know this. The hegemony does not forgive. The hegemony does not forget. Neither does Earth, Admiral, Chen replied evenly. That's something you should remember. She signaled for the transmission to end, then turned to her officers. Begin recovery operations. I want those ships secured and their crews treated with dignity. As the bridge crew carried out her orders, Commander Jackson moved to Chen's side. They'll be back, won't they? With a larger force. Chen nodded, her gaze fixed on the tactical display showing the disabled hegemony vessels. Yes, but not immediately. First, they'll need to understand what happened here. They'll need to reconsider everything they thought they knew about us. She turned to face her executive officer, a grim smile touching her lips. And by then we'll be ready for Phase 3. Across the solar system, humanity's first victory against the hegemony in nearly 2 centuries was secured. But as the Earth, Defense Force began the process of tending to enemy wounded and securing their vessels, a signal was sent, encrypted, compressed, and virtually undetectable, speeding outward to distant points beyond the Sol system. The signal contained a single phrase of Phoenix Rising, and in the darkness between stars, humanity's hidden installations, bases, shipyards, and research facilities established in secret during the long years of isolation, received the message and began to prepare for what would come next. The hegemony had demanded Earth's surrender. They had received their answer in fire and steel, but the true scale of humanity's preparation was yet to be revealed. The Hidden Armada. The grand chamber of the Hegemony High Council had never seemed so silent. 16 alien leaders from the most powerful species in the galaxy sat in stunned disbelief as they reviewed the battle footage from the Sol system. The DE images were damning. The pride of the Hegemony fleet scattered, disabled, humiliated by a supposedly primitive race that should have been easy to subjugate. Supreme Admiral Vex stood before them, his posture rigid, despite the humiliation of defeat. His formal uniform, hastily repaired, still bore subtle signs of damage, a reminder of how close he had come to death. 47 ships, stated High Counselor Morax, his tentacled appendages rippling with agitation. 47 of our finest. Warships, 7 destroyed outright, 29 disabled. The remainder forced to retreat, all against a species that had been isolated for less than 2 centuries. His voice hardened. Explain yourself, Admiral. Vex met the counselor's gaze unflinchingly. The intelligence we possessed was flawed, High Counselor. The humans have advanced far beyond our projections. That much is obvious, snapped Counselor Dravix, the reptilian leader of the Zeraxian Dominion. What is less clear is how our intelligence could have been so catastrophically wrong. The isolation barrier was designed to limit their development, to keep them technologically stunted. And yet, observed ancient Counselor Thelax, they not only survived, but thrived. They not only developed, but innovated. They not only prepared, but anticipated. His clouded eyes studied the holographic display showing Earth's defense grid in action. Most concerning of all, they clearly understood our tactical doctrines better than we understood theirs. An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber as the implications of Thelax's words sank in. Supreme Admiral Vex straightened his shoulders. High Council, I take full responsibility for the defeat at Sol. I underestimated the humans' capabilities and their resolve. I failed to consider that 2 centuries of isolation might have forced them to develop technologies and strategies that diverged significantly from galactic standards. He paused. However, I believe there is a more troubling explanation for their level of preparation. Speak plainly, Admiral, commanded Morax. The humans knew we were coming, Vex stated. Not just that we would respond to their signal. They knew our exact approach, our tactical doctrine, our ship capabilities. They had prepared specifically to counter a hegemony invasion fleet. Counselor Dravix leaned forward. Are you suggesting espionage? Infiltration of our military databases? I'm suggesting something more concerning, Vex replied grimly. Their defense grid incorporated technology that should be impossible for an isolated species to develop independently. Their tactical coordination was too perfect, their countermeasures too precisely tailored to our weaknesses. He took a deep breath. High Counselors, I believe the humans have had contact with the galaxy despite the isolation barrier. The chamber erupted in angry denials and accusations. Morax raised a limb for silence, which gradually fell. That is a grave allegation, Admiral, the High Counselor said. The isolation barrier was monitored continuously. No ships passed through in either direction. Perhaps none that we detected, Vex countered. But consider the evidence. They dismantled our impenetrable barrier with apparent ease. They knew exactly how we would attack and precisely how to counter it. These are not coincidences. Thelax's ancient voice cut through the tension. Or perhaps, Admiral, we face a more uncomfortable truth, that humanity's potential has always been greater than we acknowledged. Fleet Intelligence Officer. Mira stepped forward at Vex's gesture. Counselors, our analysis of the human vessels we engaged reveals technologies that, while novel in application, share fundamental principles with known galactic science. They did not develop these in a vacuum. Moreover, we have detected unusual energy signatures from various points beyond the Sol system, signatures that bear distinct similarities to human technology. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If humans had established presence beyond their home system, despite the isolation barrier, the strategic calculus changed completely. Show us, commanded Morax. Mira activated a holographic display showing the galaxy map. Small red markers appeared at various points, some in uninhabited systems, others in neglected regions at the edges of established territories. Based on energy signature analysis and recent astronomical anomalies, we believe these locations may harbor human outposts or installations, Mira explained. Most are situated in resource-rich but sparsely monitored regions. Preposterous, scoffed Counselor Dravix. They couldn't possibly have established interstellar presence without our knowledge. Unless, Thelax suggested quietly, they had help. The chamber fell silent again as the counselors contemplated this disturbing possibility. Which species would dare violate the isolation protocol? Who would risk the hegemony's wrath to ally with Earth? Regardless of how they achieved this, Vex continued, the strategic reality is clear. Earth represents a far greater threat than we anticipated. Their victory in the Sol system will embolden them. If they have indeed established outposts beyond their home system, they could potentially threaten hegemony interests throughout the sector. What do you propose, Admiral? Asked Morax. Vex's expression hardened. A full-scale military response, High Counselor. Not a mere demonstration of force, but the full might of the hegemony fleet. We must crush this rebellion decisively before other subjugated worlds take inspiration from Earth's defiance. Several counselors nodded in agreement, but Thalax raised a gnarled hand. Before we commit to a path of escalation, perhaps we should consider the captain's message. She claimed Earth desires no conflict, only recognition of its sovereignty. A transparent ploy, Dravix dismissed. No species rejects the protection and benefits of hegemony membership. They seek to weaken our resolve before revealing their true ambitions. Nevertheless, Thelax persisted, a diplomatic approach would cost us nothing but time. If they reject reasonable terms, then military action becomes justified in the eyes of all member worlds. High Counselor Morax considered both perspectives before reaching his decision. We shall pursue both paths simultaneously. Admiral Vex, you will assemble the Grand Fleet, every available capital ship and support vessel. Counselor Thelax, you will prepare a diplomatic delegation with appropriate security. His gaze swept the chamber. But make no mistake, the hegemony will not tolerate this challenge to our authority. One way or another, Earth will return to its proper place in the galactic order. Deep in the uncharted reaches of the Epsilon Eridani, system far beyond the attention of hegemony patrols, Phoenix Station Alpha hummed with activity. The massive installation, 3 interconnected rings surrounding a central hub, had been humanity's first extrasolar outpost, established in complete secrecy 50 years after the isolation began. Director Amara Okafor stood in the command center, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic displays showing fleet movements throughout the sector. At 63, she represented the third generation of leaders who had guided humanity's silent expansion beyond Sol. Her close-cropped silver hair and the subtle augmentation implants visible at her temples marked her as both a veteran of Earth's defense forces and a product of humanity's accelerated technological development. Status report, she requested, her rich voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. Fleet Commander Takashi Lin stepped forward. A compact man with precise movements and analytical eyes, he was one of Earth's most decorated military strategists. All Phoenix Protocol assets have been activated, Director, he reported. Our hidden shipyards are operating at maximum capacity. Defense installations at all 16 outposts are fully operational. The civilian evacuation contingencies have been implemented. And our allies, Okafor inquired. The Arvani Collective has reaffirmed their commitment to our mutual defense pact, Lin confirmed. The Solarian Concord vessels have integrated with our fleet formations as planned. The Teleth Observer Corps continues to provide real-time intelligence on hegemony movements. Okafor nodded, satisfied. Few within the hegemony suspected the full extent of Earth's preparation during the long isolation. While overtly cut off from galactic society, humanity had worked in absolute secrecy to establish connections with other species who chafed under hegemony rule or feared its expansionist policies. The Arvani, a species of brilliant engineers, who had been relegated to second-class status within the hegemony. The Solarians, Energy beings whose unique perception of reality made them invaluable navigators, but whose non-corporeal nature led many to dismiss them as lesser beings. The Teleth, ancient observers who had withdrawn from galactic politics millennia ago, but maintained vast intelligence networks out of academic interest. Each had found common cause with humanity for their own reasons. Each had contributed to the Phoenix Protocol, the comprehensive plan for humanity's emergence from isolation and establishment as an independent power in the galaxy. The Hegemony Council has made its decision, announced strategic analyst Maya Chen as she entered the command center. Our sources confirm they are mobilizing the Grand Fleet, over 400 capital ships and at least twice as many support vessels, the largest military force they've assembled in over a millennium. Lin whistled softly. They're not taking any chances this time. They're also sending a diplomatic delegation, Chen added, led by Councillor Thelax himself. Okafor raised an eyebrow. Interesting. The oldest member of the council, and reputedly the most moderate. They're hedging their bets. Or setting a trap, Lin suggested grimly. Perhaps, Okafor acknowledged. But it gives us an opportunity. Captain Chen handled the first confrontation perfectly. Now we proceed to the next phase. She activated a communication panel. Connect me with Earth Defense Command and all Phoenix Station directors. It's time to reveal exactly what humanity has been building for the past 2 centuries. As the call connected, displaying the faces of military and civilian leaders throughout Earth's hidden network of outposts and installations, Okafor's expression grew solemn. The Hegemony is mobilizing its Grand Fleet, she announced without preamble. As we anticipated, they refuse to accept Earth's independence and are preparing to crush us with overwhelming force. She paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. This is the moment we have prepared for across generations. Initiate Operation Revelation. Throughout human space, both within the Sol system and at the secret outposts beyond, carefully concealed facilities began to activate. Massive hangar doors opened in the sides of asteroids. Quantum fields that had hidden entire shipyards from detection for decades dissolved, revealing vast construction facilities. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be simple research stations, reconfigured into defensive installations. And ships, hundreds of ships, from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts, emerged from hiding places scattered across a dozen star systems. Send the signal to our allies, Okafor ordered. It's time for the galaxy to see that humanity is not alone. Aboard the Resilience, Captain Eliana Chen received the transmission from Phoenix Command with a mixture of pride and solemnity. Operation Revelation was the culmination of nearly 2 centuries of preparation, sacrifice, and vision. Now it was her privilege to command the Sol Defense Fleet during this historic moment. Orders confirmed, Director Okafor, she responded. Sol Defense Force stands ready. As the communication ended, Chen turned to Commander Jackson. Prepare the fleet for coordinated movement. We'll rendezvous with the Phoenix forces at the designated coordinates. Jackson nodded, already inputting commands into his console. What about the Hegemony diplomatic delegation? They're expected to arrive within 24 hours. We'll receive them as planned, Chen confirmed. But they'll be negotiating with the full truth before them, not just what they think they know about us. Throughout the Sol system, Earth's defense fleet, the ships that had so decisively defeated the Hegemony's initial attack, began to move. But unlike before, they made no attempt to conceal their movements or their capabilities. Dozens of vessels, from sleek frigates to massive carriers, formed up in precise formation, their energy signatures broadcast openly for the first time. Captain, called Lieutenant Reyes from the communications station. We're receiving signals from the outer system. The Phoenix fleet has arrived. Chen nodded, a smile touching her lips. On screen, the main display activated, showing a sight that few outside Earth's highest echelons had ever witnessed. The Phoenix fleet emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Unlike the Sol Defense Force, which had been built within the constraints of the isolation barrier, The Phoenix fleet represented humanity's unfettered technological development. Hundreds of vessels appeared, their designs elegant and distinctive, clearly of human origin, but incorporating influences from their alien allies. Leading them was the Phoenix Ascendant, a massive dreadnought nearly twice the size of any hegemony capital ship, its sleek hull gleaming in the distant sunlight. "Open a channel to the Phoenix Ascendant," Chen ordered. The screen shifted to show the bridge of the massive vessel. Admiral Helena Reyes, Chen's mother and one of the architects of the Phoenix Protocol, stood at the center, her uniform adorned with the subtle insignia of the Phoenix Command. "Captain Chen," the admiral greeted formally, though her eyes shone with pride. "The Phoenix fleet has arrived as scheduled. Operation Revelation is proceeding according to plan across all sectors." "Welcome to Sol, Admiral," Chen replied with equal formality. "The home fleet stands ready to integrate with your forces." Admiral Reyes nodded. "Our intelligence suggests the Hegemony Grand Fleet will arrive within 72 hours, following their diplomatic delegation. They expect to find a single system defending itself in isolation." Her lips curved in a slight smile. They're about to discover just how wrong they are. As the two fleets began their coordinated maneuvers, a signal arrived from one of Earth's long-range sensor outposts. "Captain," reported Commander Sato, "we're detecting multiple vessels approaching from the Gamma Vector. Configuration matches our Vani design." Chen nodded, unsurprised. "Our allies arrive right on schedule. Open a channel and transmit recognition codes." Within hours, the space around Earth transformed, where once there had been only the sole defense force, impressive but limited to a single star system's resources, now stood the combined might of humanity's true strength. The Phoenix fleet with its advanced technology, the Arvani Collective with their innovative shield systems and quantum weaponry, the Solarian Concord vessels with their reality-bending propulsion capabilities. Together, they represented not just a fleet, but a statement. Earth was not alone, not isolated, and definitely not defenseless. As the final ships took their positions, Captain Chen opened a channel to all vessels. "This is Captain Eliana Chen of the Earth Defense Force," and she began, her voice carrying to thousands of human and alien crew members throughout the assembled fleet. "For nearly 2 centuries, humanity has prepared for this moment, the day we would stand before the galaxy not as subjects, not as a quarantined curiosity, but as equals." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the bridge of the Resilience where her crew stood proud and ready. "The hegemony believes they come to crush a rebellion. Instead, they will find a new power has risen among the stars, one founded not on conquest or subjugation, but on mutual respect and cooperation, one committed to the principle that all sentient beings deserve self-determination." Throughout the fleet, humans and their allies listened intently to Chen's words. "We do not seek war. We have never sought war. But we will not surrender the freedom we have earned through generations of sacrifice and preparation. When the hegemony arrives, they will face a choice: accept the new reality of the galaxy, or face the consequences of their arrogance." She straightened, her expression resolute. "Take your position, stand ready, and remember, today we fight not just for Earth, but for every world that has suffered under hegemony rule. Today we change the galaxy forever." As the communication ended, Chen turned to Commander Jackson. "Are the diplomatic preparations complete?" Jackson nodded. "Yes, Captain. The reception facilities are ready for Counselor Thelax and his delegation. All security protocols are in place." "Good," Chen replied. "Let's hope they choose wisdom over pride." Across the vast expanse of space surrounding Earth, the combined fleet took formation, a display of power impossible to ignore or misinterpret. The message was clear. The hegemony had demanded Earth's surrender, but what they would find were not white flags but warships, and the dawn of a new era in galactic history. A new dawn. The diplomatic vessel Voice of Concord emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its ornate design marking it clearly as a hegemony diplomatic carrier rather than a warship. Flanked by 4 escort vessels, powerful but not overtly threatening, It represented the hegemony's reluctant acknowledgement that the situation might require more than simple military force. Aboard the Voice of Concord, ancient Counselor Thelax stood at the observation deck, his aged eyes taking in the sight before him. Even prepared by the reports, the reality was staggering. Where he had expected to find a single systems defense force, impressive perhaps but ultimately limited, he instead beheld an armada that rivaled the hegemony's grand fleet itself. "Impossible," whispered Ambassador Krell, who stood beside him. "These cannot all be human vessels." "They are not," Thelax confirmed, his voice betraying no emotion despite his inner turmoil. "Observe the configurations of the vessels in the outer formation. Arvani design philosophy. And those," he gestured to shimmering ships that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, "are unmistakably Solarian." "The Arvani?" Krell's voice rose in disbelief. "The Solarians? They are hegemony protectorates. This is treason of the highest order." Thelax turned his ancient gaze to the younger diplomat. "Is it treason to seek one's freedom, Ambassador, or is it simply the natural order reasserting itself?" Before Krell could respond, the communication officer's voice came through the ship's speakers. "Counselor Thelax, we are receiving a transmission from the human flagship. They are offering escort to Earth for diplomatic discussions." "Accept their offer," Thelax commanded, "and inform them I wish to speak with Captain Chen personally." Minutes later, the main display activated, showing the now familiar face of Captain Eliana Chen. Unlike their previous encounter, she wore formal diplomatic attire, a deep blue uniform adorned with subtle insignia of rank and achievement. "Counselor Thelax," she greeted him with a respectful nod. "On behalf of the United Earth Government and our allies, I welcome you to the Sol system." "Captain Chen," Thelax returned the greeting. "Your hospitality is appreciated, though I must confess the scope of your alliance was unexpected." Faint smile touched Chen's lips. "The galaxy is full of surprises, Counselor. Perhaps that is something both our peoples can agree upon." "Indeed." Thelax studied her carefully. "I note you refer to our allies, not our colonies or our subjects. An interesting distinction." "Not merely semantic," Chen replied. "The Solarian Concord, the Arvani Collective, and the other members of what we call the Free Systems Alliance have joined with humanity as equals, each maintaining their sovereignty while committing to mutual defense and cooperation." Thelax's eyes narrowed slightly. "A novel arrangement. One might even call it revolutionary." "We prefer evolutionary," Chen countered smoothly. "The galaxy has operated under the hegemony's hierarchical structure for millennia. We believe a more collaborative approach benefits all sentient species." "Philosophy that will be tested soon," Thelax observed. "The hegemony Grand Fleet approaches, Captain. 400 capital ships with full support elements. Even with your impressive alliance, you face overwhelming force." Chen's expression remained confident. "Numbers alone do not determine outcomes, Counselor. But we would prefer to resolve this peacefully. That is why we welcome your diplomatic mission." Thelax inclined his head slightly. "Then let us proceed to Earth. I am curious to see what other surprises await us there." The diplomatic reception took place in the Grand Assembly Hall of the United Earth Government in Geneva, a magnificent structure of transparent aluminum and reclaimed materials that symbolized humanity's commitment to both technological advancement and environmental harmony. Representatives from across human space were present, not just Earth, but Mars, Venus, the Jovian and Saturnian colonies, and delegates from the distant Phoenix outposts. Alongside them stood their alien allies, the crystalline Arvani with their geometric thought patterns, the shimmering energy forms of the Solarians contained in specially designed interface units, and even a small contingent of Teleth observers, their ancient eyes recording every moment for their vast historical archives. Director Amara Okafor led the human delegation, with Captain Chen at her side. Facing them across the massive circular table sat Counselor Thelax, Ambassador Krell, and their diplomatic aides. "Before we begin formal negotiations," Thelax said, his ancient voice carrying easily through the chamber. "I must express my curiosity. How did humanity accomplish all of this?" He gestured to encompass not just the hall but all it represented. While supposedly isolated from the galaxy, Okafor smiled. "A fair question, Counselor. The answer is simple. The isolation barrier was never as impenetrable as the hegemony believed." Krell bristled. "Impossible. Our monitoring was constant." "Your monitoring was predictable," Okafor corrected calmly. "Within 5 years of the barrier's establishment, our scientists had identified its operational parameters. Within 20, we had developed methods to create temporary, localized gaps that your sensors couldn't detect. But that would require— Krell's voice trailed off as realization dawned. "Understanding of phase shift technology beyond what you believed we possessed," Okafor confirmed. "The hegemony's fundamental mistake was assuming that isolating Earth would halt our development. Instead, it accelerated it. Without the distraction of galactic politics, or the complacency that comes with access to established technologies, humanity was forced to innovate." Thelax's ancient eyes gleamed with something like respect. "And once you could breach the barrier undetected, we began to explore," Captain Chen continued. "Carefully, cautiously, always maintaining the illusion of isolation. We established outposts in abandoned systems, contacted species who had reason to distrust the hegemony, built alliances based on mutual benefit rather than dominance." "The Phoenix Protocol," Thelax murmured. "You know of it?" Okafor asked, surprised. "I suspected something of the kind," the ancient counselor admitted. 2 centuries ago, I voted against the isolation policy. I argued that containing humanity would only delay the inevitable, that your species' potential could not be permanently suppressed. Over the decades, I noted unusual patterns in seemingly unrelated events across the galaxy. Small irregularities that taken individually meant nothing, but together suggested an unseen hand at work. He leaned forward, his gaze intense despite his age. "What I could not have anticipated was the scale of your achievement. You have not merely survived isolation, you have created an alternative to the hegemony itself." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the implications of his words sank in. Ambassador Krell looked as though he might object, but Thelax raised a hand for silence. "The question before us now," the ancient counselor continued, "is what happens next. The Grand Fleet will arrive within 48 hours. Supreme Admiral Vex comes not to negotiate, but to reassert hegemony control by any means necessary. Then, he will find us ready," Okafor stated simply. "Our combined fleet is prepared for battle. Our defensive systems are fully operational. If the hegemony chooses war, we will defend ourselves and our allies." "At what cost?" Thelax asked quietly. "Even if you prevail, millions will die. Worlds will burn. The galaxy will be torn apart." "A cost we are prepared to pay for freedom," Captain Chen said firmly, "but one we would prefer to avoid." Thelax nodded slowly. "As would I. Which is why I propose an alternative path." He tapped a sequence into the data terminal before him, bringing up a holographic display of galactic political boundaries. The Free Systems Alliance currently encompasses approximately 18% of known space, including regions the hegemony has long considered under its control. With a gesture, he highlighted specific sectors. "I propose formal recognition of the Alliance as an independent political entity with defined borders, non-aggression pacts between the Alliance and the hegemony, open trade relations, cultural exchange, a transitional period during which worlds currently under hegemony control may choose to join the Alliance if they wish, with appropriate compensation to the hegemony for lost resources." Ambassador Krell stared at his superior in shock. "Counselor, you cannot possibly be suggesting—" "I suggest what must be done to avoid unnecessary bloodshed," Thelax cut him off sharply. "The hegemony has ruled for millennia because it adapted to changing circumstances. We face such a circumstance now." He turned back to the human delegates. "I cannot guarantee the High Council will accept these terms, but I can present them. As the recommendation of a counselor who has served the hegemony for 12 lifetimes, it may be enough to give pause to those who hunger for war. Okafor studied the ancient alien thoughtfully. And what do you gain from this, counselor? Why advocate for peace when your colleagues clearly desire conflict? Thilax's wizened features softened slightly. I have seen enough of war, Director Okafor. I have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across a span of time your species can barely comprehend. The strong conquer the weak, only to grow complacent and be conquered in turn. It is a cycle as old as sentient life itself. He gestured to the assembled representatives, human and alien alike. But what you have created here, an alliance of equals, united not by force but by choice, this is something new, something that in all my millennia I have not seen before. His ancient eyes seemed to look beyond the present into some distant future. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to try a different path. 48 hours later, the hegemony Grand Fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system, a vast armada of warships stretching as far as the eye could see. At its center, the super-dreadnought Eternal Dominion carried Supreme Admiral Vex and the full might of the hegemony High Command. The Admiral stood on his command deck, surveying the tactical display with growing disbelief as his fleet's sensors registered the true scale of the force arrayed against them. This cannot be accurate, he growled. Recalibrate all sensors immediately. Sensors are functioning correctly, Supreme Admiral, reported his tactical officer, voice tight with tension. The enemy fleet numbers over 500 capital ships with twice as many support vessels. We've identified human designs, but also Arvani, Solarian, and several unknown configurations. Impossible, Vex muttered, though the evidence before him defied denial. Where is Counselor Thilax's vessel? Maintaining position in Earth orbit, sir. They're transmitting on the diplomatic frequency, requesting immediate communication. Vex hesitated, his tactical instincts warring with political reality. He had come expecting to crush a rebellious system, not to face a force that rivaled his own. Open the channel, he finally ordered. The main view,